European Union is insisting on more rigorous testing for washing up gloves, and it could mean you end up paying more for your rubber gloves. Let's now talk to the Guardian columnist Michael White, who's previously written about the love-hate relationship between the UK and the EU. Michael, good afternoon to you.
Hello.
Welcome back to BBC Radio Wales. Why on earth are they doing this?
Well, they're not doing it yet. It's got to be voted on by ministers and it's got to be voted on by Parliament now. I know the EU does a lot of silly things, but I've done some checking since you rang me earlier this morning, and I don't think this is one of them. What it's all about is 20 years ago, 25 years ago, they instituted standards for industrial clothing to protect people at work from burns and other things. Now, that's okay. People who work in dangerous jobs know it's okay. When I was your age, they actually insisted that ice cream should have ice cream in it. In other words, not be made by pig fat, and it transformed the British ice cream industry entirely for the better, I might add. Anyway, in this case, what they're doing is extending it to private homes, so that if you sell cheap gloves that don't do the job, protect oven gloves or dishwashing gloves, I burned myself in the kitchen only yesterday, my own fault, then you're not allowed to claim that they do. They're not going to ban anything.
Okay, and let's just talk about the bananas. Cannot be too bendy. When I mentioned this in my menu earlier today, I had some chap on Twitter writing to me, will you stop going on about that, because that never really happened. So are these now EU myths?
Well, there is a website. I looked on it half an hour ago before you rang me back. If you Google EU myths, there's a whole sort of website, and there are officials, because of the Fleet Street, the Tory newspapers in London, the Eurosceptic newspapers, all owned by foreign or foreign-based oligarchs who don't live here for tax purposes. I feel obliged to point that out. They love all this stuff. They've all run this story this morning. I've looked in the Financial Times. It's not there. It's not in the Guardian. I don't think it's in the Times. But they love this stuff, and they don't check them very hard. It's because ministers want to look tough with UKIP. And young Matthew Hancock, the minister who's saying this is marigold madness, he probably spent all weekend thinking up that phrase. He's a bright young man, but he's an ambitious young man, and if George Osborne told him to put his granny in the dishwasher, he'd probably do it. In breach of EU regulations, I might add, because the granny regulation specifically bans that.
Have you ever ordered a pint of shandy at a pub recently? Can you still get a pint of shandy? I think you can.
Of course you can. It's so boring, isn't it? I go into a pub, I still drink bitter. I'm of a bitter generation.
Yeah.
And 2 pints of bitter, please.
For the record, I'm not a shandy man. Neither are you, Michael.
No.
But
I've done it, unless if the EU bans it, I'll take it up, but it won't.
Michael, let's hear from Ian Frost. He is the managing director of the Flint-based rubber glove distributors Lansdowne Industrial Limited. Ian Frost, good afternoon to you.
Hello there.
Welcome to BBC Radio Wales. You're a rubber glove...
There, if I may.
Go on, sorry.
We're not just rubber glove manufacturers or distributors. We're manufacturing chemists, but we also distribute work gloves into industry and commerce. So.
Right, okay. But you do distribute rubber gloves?
Yes.
Okay.
Other things?
Good, okay, good. So, are you a self-confessed rubber glove expert, first and foremost?
No, and I must admit, just like your other person, I've been hurriedly reading the internet in the half an hour since your colleague called me earlier. But we like to think, and I like to think, we're reasonably proficient in regulation regarding to gloves and their use in the workplace and the home also.
Okay, well, let's deal with the serious side of this story. Do they need more vigorous testing?
In my personal opinion, no. I think we're pretty well covered at present. There is perfectly adequate regulation which covers how most products are tested, I believe, in the environments that we work within. And I think we probably get back to the age-old question of who regulates to what degree and what cost of that is passed on to the consumer.
Right, okay. So as a business then, do you think you will suffer if these new rules are brought in?
That's a difficult one to answer, isn't it? Because if every business has to absorb an increase of cost, in theory it just makes the price go higher for everybody in the marketplace. Whether that would be the case, I don't know. Just picking up on what you discussed with the other gentleman earlier on, I think you get down to a point about what of this is just being political for the sake of it and what is being sensible. Businesses are job creators, they're wealth producers, and they need a stable, sensible commercial environment to operate in. We all take responsibility for safety and conformity to acceptable standards, but I think it boils down to whether you think that those standards are being too rigorously set for the wrong reasons.
Yeah, but there must be a reason why the EU are doing this. I mean, what are the risks if rubber gloves do not withstand basic detergents?
I don't know is the honest answer. And until your caller called me earlier on, I was of the mistaken belief that most things that were done with regards to the regulations of most PPE equipment were fairly well covered and fairly well established. And as your other caller, sorry, your other
Michael.
person mentioned as well, I think as a person that flicks through regulations and flicks through books and catalogues and sort of guidelines and information relating to PPE daily, I see no shortage of rigorous standards that are applied and things have to pass and test. So I'm slightly mystified as to why we need extra regulation other than perhaps updated testing if the marketplace has changed. But I'm unaware of any major changes that would necessitate that.
And Michael, earlier this year, the EU banned any vacuum cleaner with a motor exceeding 1,600 watts, helping combat climate change. Sir James Dyson, he of vacuum cleaner fame, launched a legal challenge. I suppose there could be a danger that Marigold and other rubber glove companies can launch a legal battle.
Well, it might be, but I doubt it. Dyson's a special case. He's an interesting, creative man, a great entrepreneur, shipped a lot of his manufacture abroad, I have to point out, for people listening who might be interested in jobs. But he's a man we should all listen to. And you're right, it was a climate change thing. And most people don't need vacuum cleaners that can stop a tank at 20 yards. But I've just been listening to your colleague on the radio there, who's obviously a responsible rubber glove manufacturer. Not everybody is, you know, and this may not be about Britain. People forget. It may be about dodgy rascals in Greece or Romania or Portugal. I don't know. And I do concede the EU is sometimes a pain in the neck with its regulations. But what I've seen this morning, all it's doing is, subject to agreement and votes by ministers and MEPs, they're going to extend to the domestic market the protection which I'm sure the gentleman on the line provides for his commercial industrial products, because we don't want people to get burned. Burns are nasty, and there's some rubbishy products out there, as we all know.
Very good to talk to you both. Thank you very much indeed to Michael White and to Ian Frost. Who uses rubber gloves anyway? If you use rubber gloves, I want to hear from you. 8 10 12 on the text. You can email jason@bbc.co.uk and tweet @BBC Radio Wales.